And Michael Jackson, a friend, who said to him one day and gave the most chilling statement to me, Conrad, do you know that your life and my life will become inseparable for the rest of time? That was chilling. But what do you mean by that? He chuckled, smiled a little bit, relaxed, and engaged me again. And he says, because I am clairvoyant, you'll see.
Cruise lights, brown on the dash, sun in the sky, Havana in the glass, wind talking stripes on the shirt to my right, gold in my chain, but the weight's in the story. Every scar on my skin is a note in the glory. You feel me?
Yo, Bob,
the wheel driving itself, man.
This thing out here cruising like it got a chauffeur. You ain't even touching it.
I swear I ain't doing nothing. Car smarter than half the dudes I know.
The allegation of child molestation was manufactured. I was the legal secretary that worked for the attorney who represented the father of the 93 accuser, and I actually witnessed them set Michael Jackson up.
I don't know what's going to happen, but I just feel in my soul, only God knows, they could shoot me. They could stop me. They could frame me and say I overdosed you with drugs. They can do a lot of things.
Certainly when I made the documentary, there was a small part of that which contained a controversy concerning his relationship with other young people. But the truth is that he was never convicted of any crime. I never saw any wrongdoing myself. And whilst his lifestyle may have been a bit unorthodox, I don't believe it was criminal. And I think the world has now lost the greatest entertainer it's probably ever known.
Michael's still alive.
Be honest with me.
Nah, I don't. My mom says it, but I don't think so.
He is. Boy, he's alive! He's alive! Hey, you heard it? Michael Jackson's alive, cuz.
And how long were you out of the room?
I was gone out of the room for a long time. Because when I left Michael Jackson, he was not on a propofol infusion, which is what the prosecutors contend. And there was no evidence to support that.
This is the guy that was protecting Michael Jackson the day that he died. After he was probably already asleep, and the only witnesses, there were no witnesses to the crime. I'm honestly kind of surprised that this guy never got checked into as a suspect. I'm not trying to make any allegations, I'm just saying anyone can inject a dude with lots of propofol.
Well, normally when I left him, he was on the pillow. And when I came back, lower in the bed and closer to the edge. But he was there, but it wasn't the same person I saw. It wasn't the same person I saw.
Hello, Harry. How are you? It is a very sad day for me here. I am heartbroken.
What was it like to be?
And arrived, and we couldn't even talk. We just hugged, we stood there, we cried, and I am heartbroken. I have warned that one day Michael Jackson would wake up dead and that I would not be silent.
Marlon?
Yeah, that's Marlon. That's Marlon and Randy.
Who was that figure in the back seat?
Hey! Hey, where's Michael?
Hey.
Oh, Mike!
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap. Oh, hello. Sup, sobers? You want to know why I wear a glove just on my right hand? Well, it's because I've been diagnosed with a very rare skin condition. It's called vitiligo. Essentially, my body attacks my skin cells, and it essentially attacks all the melanin right out of my skin. Causes all these white, blotchy patches all around my whole body. No, of course it's not. It's not dangerous, nor is it contagious. But you can certainly imagine it has a dramatic effect on my personal psychological well-being. It's something that's caused me much shame, insecurity, and embarrassment for many years. I've tried to hide it, but unfortunately, I had to opt into a hydroquinone therapy, which will depigmentize the rest of my skin. I'll have no color in my skin. And members of the media have taken my situation and only made it that much worse. Instead of supporting me or helping folks understand what I'm going through. They simply slander me and make me seem crazy, make me feel guilty like I'm trying to leave behind my cultural roots. But that's so far from the truth. This is just one of many, many ways that the media has gone out of their way to try and make me look like something that I'm not. But if you want to know the real Michael Jackson, well then you've got to show some love, think happy thoughts, and fly away with me to Neverland.
Let's go.
Alcohol.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to Sobering Stories with me, DJ Petrovsky. It's extremely hard to do that. So yeah, thank you so much. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you are a returning subscriber or viewer, well then make sure that you're subscribed, because I've had a lot of people tell me that for some reason or another they've gotten unsubscribed, and then just hit the notification bell so that every single Friday your phone will tell you that I'm trying to let you know that there's a new video that has just been uploaded to YouTube. Also, so 2 weeks ago we talked about the king of rock and roll. Then last week we talked about the Prince, just Prince. Not intentionally, this week I would love to talk about the other king, the king of pop, Michael Jackson. I think I say this literally every single episode that I've done. I always end up somewhere I wasn't planning. I was not expecting there to be so much evidence that both Prince as well as Elvis could still be around. And the same could be said about MJ, because the dude might still be around.
You feel me?
But I think what Michael's story has taught me above anything else is just how powerful and manipulative the mainstream media actually is. Just how good they are at brainwashing us and getting us to believe, well, whatever they want us to believe. And I couldn't help but notice, just like many other people, how many similarities there are between Michael Jackson and our good buddy Kanye West. And to say that covering Michael Jackson's story this week literally broke my heart into two pieces would be an understatement. It's just awfully sad what they did to this poor guy. This guy who literally dedicated his entire motherfucking life to his fans, to the people who loved him. When he tried to give a little bit of that love back, the world hated on him for it. But truly, Michael's story is yet another reason why I will never cease to keep it weird. Michael Joe Jackson was born on August 29th, 1958. He was the 8th of 10 kids. Jeez, dude. His dad's name was Joe Jackson. His mom's name was Catherine. His dad was an aspiring R&B soul musician. That was like a lifelong dream of his. And his mom was a homemaker. His mom was a homemaker. His dad was a steel mill crane operator. And as you can imagine, a place like Gary, Indiana doesn't sound like the coolest place. No offense if your name's Gary. But it was a fairly industrial city. Even though his dad had dreams of being a musician, he was never really able to get out of the grind of just being an everyday industrial steel mill crane operator. For that reason, he always wanted more for his kids. He wanted them to break out of Gary. He wanted them to break out of this mold that they were stuck in and do something truly phenomenal. And honestly, it seems like he was maybe living vicariously through his kids, trying to achieve that musical career through his children since he couldn't have it himself. Joe Jackson had noticed Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine, which are Michael's older brothers, fooling around with instruments, playing music here and there. And he figured he was going to hone in on that. Like, okay, if they're interested in music, I'm going to make sure that they get trained into it so that they can be amazing musicians. So he started doing that. And initially he had the three brothers and he called it the Jackson Brothers. And then once Marlon and Michael came along, then he, of course, added them into the mix. And in 1964, this is when the Jackson Brothers' little brother band was formed. What we would now know as the Jackson 5. But Joe didn't do the whole, let's get our kids involved in some music lessons or some piano lessons. No, he sent them straight to musical Full Metal Jacket boot camp.
You are nothing but unorganized, grabastic pieces of amphibian shit. Your ass looks like about 150 pounds of chewed bubble gum, Lyle. You know that? How tall are you, Private? Sir, 5'9", sir! 5'9". I didn't know they stacked shit that high. You're so ugly you could be a modern art masterpiece. It looks to me like the best part of you ran down the crack of your mama's ass and ended up as a brown stain on the mattress.
Make a mistake, you're gonna get hit with the belt. Maybe an extension cord. Maybe I'll have you go over to that tree, break a branch off so that I can then beat you with it. That kind of boot camp style fun learning.
Not only were we practicing, we were nervous rehearsing because he sat in a chair and he had this bell in his hand. And if you didn't do it the right way, he would tear you up, really get you.
Would he only use a belt?
Why do you do this to me? No, more than a belt. Ironing cords, whatever's around. Throw you up against the wall hard as he could. See, it's one thing to...
But you were only a child.
I know.
You were a baby.
I know. He would lose his temper. I just remember hearing my mother scream, Joe, you're going to kill him, you're going to kill him, stop it, you're going to kill him, you know, and I don't think he realizes to this day how scared. I mean scared. So scared that I would regurgitate. And he didn't allow us to call him Daddy. And I wanted to call him Daddy so bad. And I totally forgive him for all of it, you know. You have to. But I don't allow my children to call me Michael. I say I'm Daddy.
So though Michael and the rest of the Jackson brothers all really found an escape through music, they also found themselves extremely caged by music at the same time. And they were truly missing out on their entire childhood. They were forced to practice and rehearse for 5 hours a day after school. No breaks, no time for games, just straight up practicing every day, 5 hours a day, no matter what. Plus, Michael's family was Jehovah's Witness. And if you don't know, Jehovah's Witnesses do not celebrate any holidays. No birthdays, no holidays, no Christmas, no fun. So he didn't celebrate anything fun. He didn't get to hang out or enjoy a normal childhood like all the rest of the kids that were running around, playing games, playing sports, doing whatever. He was grinding. But we do talk about this each and every week. That crucial time window between the ages of birth and 10 years old are extremely important. And at the age of 5 years old, Michael was already the #1 breadwinner of the family. He was bringing home $1,000 a night singing with his brothers. And because Michael had such a powerhouse voice, he became the frontman of the band, even though he was the youngest member. Now, the Jackson brothers, they were grinding, man. They were playing tons of local gigs, and they actually opened up for a guy named Bobby Taylor and his band, Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers. They were playing in Chicago, and Bobby loved the Jackson brothers so much, and he was like, yo, you guys got to audition for Motown. And Motown Records at this time was one of the biggest things happening for black music. So he hooked him up with an audition, and of course they wowed the guys at Motown. And in March of 1969, the Jackson brothers signed with Motown Records and officially began touring. So the Jacksons packed up, they moved out to LA.
LA.
Thank you. LA.
Well, you've never even been to LA? You have to come to LA. You would love LA. LA, Toyota hybrid fucking cars, LA.
Pull your finger out of your ass. That's exactly what I said. Pull your finger out of your ass. What's this about LA?
And the Jackson 5 started working on their very first debut album, and it came out titled Diana Ross Presents the Jackson 5. Now, this was in December of 1969. By April of 1971, they had released 5 albums, which is a lot. Of course, one of them was a Christmas album, but still. Throughout this whole journey, of course, the Jackson 5 became hugely popular, but there was one particular member that stood out among the rest. And of course, that was Michael Jackson. He not only had amazing dance moves, but for his age, he was an amazing singer.
How long you been singing?
3 years.
See, you went to grab it right away. Gonna snatch it right out of my hand there. Was I right? Are you 9 or 10? I've forgotten.
9.
You know, it's very difficult. What's with the O's and the R's? There's a few girls over there want to take you home. Well, who knows? How many How many brothers and sisters do you
I
have?
have 3 sisters and 6 brothers.
How come there are no girls in this act?
Well, most of our girls, they get kind of shy, you know.
Are you shy?
No.
No, I kind of had that figured out. I would like to find out the difference between Gary, Indiana, and living in Los Angeles. You moved here now?
Yes, well, it's pretty sunny out here. Like it a little bit better.
Do you?
Yeah, it's cold in Indiana.
It's so much warmer in LA.
Who do you admire the most in the music business?
Well, I like the Beatles and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and 3 Dog Nights.
All right.
So good, in fact, that he decided to start breaking off and doing his own solo stuff in 1972. So Michael breaks off, starts doing his own thing on the side. He's still involved with the Jackson 5, but he's also doing his own thing, just doubling down, extra grinding. He ends up pumping out 4 albums from 1972 until 1975. But it's at this point in 1975 that the Jackson 5 start to realize they need more artistic creative freedom in their music, and they're really sick of only making like 2.8% revenue on any of their album sales. They need to make more money for the work they're doing, and they really should. So they start looking outside of Motown Records at other possibilities. Joe Jackson was hugely instrumental in negotiating a new deal with Epic Records, which is a subsidiary company record label of Sony Records, and they end up making the switch. But Jermaine Jackson decides that he's going to stay behind and work on his own solo career. So Randy Jackson actually replaces him, and since Motown owns the name Jackson 5, they have to change their name to the Jacksons. After making this switch to Epic Records, the Jacksons are touring a whole lot more. They come up with 3 new albums between 1975 and 1978. There isn't any sort of action from Michael in his solo career at this point. One of the main reasons for that is because he actually was the star of the movie The Wiz in 1978. So he was acting and trying to get ready for that film, while also touring and still making albums with his brothers. But in 1979, that's when Michael drops his album Off the Wall, which in my opinion is such an amazing album. And you can really hear the transition from young boy Michael into the future legendary superstar Michael Jackson that we now know. Now, I didn't know this, and maybe you didn't either, so it might be a cute little fun fact for you. But while Michael Jackson was working on arguably his 2 most successful albums of all time, Thriller and Bad, he was actively touring and released 2 albums with the Jacksons. How hard was this dude grinding? Like, literally, that is insane to me. It wasn't until 1984, after the Victory Tour. Man, I am seriously Dr. Seuss. But it wasn't until 1984, after the Victory Tour, that Michael decided to distance himself from his brothers and really focus solely on his solo career. And honestly, this Victory Tour was kind of messed up. His brothers were really envious of the success he was having on his own, and Thriller had just dropped and was, well, obviously as successful as Thriller was, and he should have been touring that album. But instead, he felt obligated to help his brothers out financially by doing this Victory Tour, and they ended up just playing a bunch of Michael's solo songs anyways, a bunch of songs from Thriller. So, I mean, it's obvious that they felt kind of bad, but that would be the last that Michael would ever play with the Jacksons. At the ripe young age of 26 years old, Michael Jackson had achieved the pinnacle of success, one would say. He had been in the limelight since he was 5 years old, though. And you can imagine he never had a normal childhood. He never went to school. He didn't go to homecoming or prom. He never had girlfriends. He never had homework. He literally didn't celebrate any holidays. All he did was make music, rehearse, create, produce music. That's all he did. And probably ate. I think that's the only other thing he probably did. One of the other things that Michael Jackson didn't do was drugs. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. He didn't do anything, at least not that we know. But you can imagine that he probably had some really interesting quirks or desires, or I don't know. He probably had some very interesting things that he held on to from being a kid that he never got to express or experience that maybe now he's really interested in having since he has all the money in the world to do so. And a perfect example of this is when he purchases, or I guess I should say rescues, a chimpanzee from a Texas laboratory. Basically turns him into his little homie, and he names him Bubbles. And quick little fun fact about Bubbles is he is currently 42 years old, living at the Florida Center for Great Apes, apparently just living in this old folks gorilla home while he ages, and sounds like he's doing okay. One thing's for sure though, Michael's success was meteoric. He was already a huge star, but he went from star to superstar with the album Thriller, and for good reason. That album's phenomenal, everybody knows that. So many amazing hits that we still listen to came from that album. Billie Jean, Thriller, Beat It, phenomenal. That album has sold 70 million copies to date. It has won 8 Grammy Awards, and it is also the Guinness Book World Record holder for the best-selling album ever. And though Thriller is quite literally one of the, if not the greatest music video ever made,
I have something I want to tell you.
Yes, Michael?
I'm not like other guys.
Of course not. That's why I love you.
No, I mean I'm different.
What are you talking about?
It was denounced by the Church of the Jehovah's Witnesses as demonic and occultist. Of course, because of all the demonic and occultist stuff in the video. But it was so bad that Michael felt like he needed to put a little PSA at the beginning of the video because he was Jehovah's Witness. It says, "Due to my strong personal convictions, I wish to stress that this film in no way endorses a belief in the occult."
Michael Jackson.
I don't know, I just thought that was funny and interesting, and kind of the opposite of what happened with Prince last week, where he dove more into the church. This was the point for Michael where he started to realize that the church was infringing on his creative freedom as well. And then in 1987, he would officially leave the church and would no longer call himself Jehovah's Witness. Obviously, with all this success comes brand deals and sponsorships, promotional deals, whatever. And one of those came for Mike from Pepsi to do a commercial for him. They wanted to market the new generation drinks Pepsi, basically saying that kids and young people drink Pepsi, old people drink Coke. And since Michael is now this new pop, just generational superstar, he's the perfect spokesperson for this movement. So they hire him on to do some really cool commercial. And during the filming of that commercial, during one of the takes, one of the pyrotechnics actually goes off early and lights his hair on fire as he's walking down these steps. And he doesn't even realize it until he's at the bottom of the steps and he does this spin move and then they finally put him out. He actually withstood 2nd and 3rd degree burns to his head, and it was so bad he could never grow hair there ever again. He ended up getting his head tattooed right there, like completely black, so that it kind of covered that spot a little bit. But that's why he would always wear wigs. So yet again, the media makes him out to be this crazy wig-wearing, just unknown mystery figure. And yet there's a very logical, understandable explanation as to why he had to wear wigs all the time. Now, I'm not sure if Michael was just feeling extra bad for leaving the church in 1987, but that's when he embarks on his Bad tour, which rakes in $45 million. And just sets the stage for him to keep cruising as the king of pop. Now, unlike our guy Prince last week, releasing 40 studio albums, apparently after the formation of Paisley Park Records, Prince was still making albums. In fact, he would make one album per year from 1979 all the way until 2015. Michael only ended up releasing 3 more studio albums after this: Dangerous, His Story, and Invincible, all of which were underneath Sony Records. Michael was at the top of his game at this point, flying high. He not only was the king of pop, but he also had popularized the moonwalk, and the robot. It truly seemed like literally nothing could bring down Michael Jackson at this point. But there are two purchases that he makes that will certainly threaten that success. The first one would be the 1985 purchase of the ATV music catalog. Now, this catalog had 4,000 plus songs from huge artists like Hank Williams, Elvis, Cher, the Beatles. In 1967, the Beatles publishing company, Northern Songs, was owned by John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Brian Epstein, their manager, and a guy named Dick James, who was a British music publisher. When Brian Epstein ended up passing away, Dick James then held the majority shares on the whole company. And when things turned sour between him, Paul McCartney, and John Lennon, he decided to secretly sell his shares of the company, which included his as well as Brian's shares, to ATV Music Publishing. Yeah, it's a real dick move. The Beatles, they were pissed about this, and John Lennon and Paul McCartney tried desperately to buy back the shares, but the owner of ATV Publishing outbid them. They ended up having to sell the rest of their shares to ATV. Now they own the entire Beatles catalog. In 1982, Paul McCartney decides to tell Michael, like, yo, it's very important that you own the rights to your music. Owning publishing rights is like gold. Literally anytime these songs are played, whoever owns them makes money. And so this is what prompts Michael to start looking into what music publishing rights he could buy. And in 1985, his lawyer, John Branca, tells him that the ATV music catalog is up for sale. So Michael Jackson ends up buying the entire catalog, over 4,000 plus songs, for $47.5 million. Then in 1988, Sony would actually purchase CBS Records, which included Columbia and Epic Records, which Michael Jackson was on at the time. Those would all become subsidiaries of Sony Records, which was a brand new, massive record label that just started. Then, with Michael Jackson owning this massive catalog of ATV songs, they merge and they create the ATV Sony Music Group in 1991. So essentially, Michael had sold 50% of this music catalog to Sony. But that does also mean that Michael gets half of what Sony owns, aka this new CBS acquisition they just made. Extremely smart business move. Obviously soured things between him and Paul McCartney, I'm sure. The second purchase that Michael made that would threaten his livelihood would be the purchase of Neverland Ranch in 1988. This ranch was a kid's dream. It literally had a movie theater, a zoo, a private amusement park, swimming pools, tons of property. Literally sounds like a dream. And Neverland, obviously, is where Peter Pan lived, which is where kids never grow up. So, kind of makes sense. And like we had talked about before, Michael didn't really have much, if any, of a childhood. So it makes total sense that he wanted to have this childhood dreamland that he could call his home. He also wanted to make sure that this would be a safe space and a fun place for kids to come visit, because he wanted to help give kids who were in his same position a childhood as well. He knows exactly how hard the grind is and how easy it is for them to get wrapped up in working all the time and completely miss out on being a kid. But Michael would not just invite famous, music entertainment industry kids over. He also used Neverland as a place to help children in need, families that were in need, kids with cancer. This was a destination spot for pretty much any kid who ever wanted to meet Michael Jackson and see what it was like to ride the roller coasters or ride the rides on his ranch. Now, in 1991, Michael's sister, LaToya Jackson, was married to a guy named Jack Gordon, and Jack was not only a con man, he had ties to the mafia. Sounds like a real piece of garbage. He was extremely abusive to LaToya, like extremely. But he starts calling Michael a pederast, which I didn't really know what that was, but basically it just means an older guy who likes to hang out with kids, likely in an inappropriate way. This predates any sort of other allegations about Michael, and so this would be kind of the first time anybody says anything about what he's doing with kids on his Neverland Ranch property. That is until 1993. Michael Jackson's car breaks down, and a really nice guy who owns a tow truck company picks him up, brings him home, helps him get his car situation figured out, and Michael was so grateful for their help that he invites him and the entire family out to Neverland Ranch. Now, this guy's name is Dave Schwartz, and he has a son named Jordan Chandler. This is actually a stepson, and so him, Jordan, and Jordan's mom, they all go start hanging out at Neverland Ranch all the time. And then eventually it gets to the point where Michael keeps inviting him back out, and then he keeps inviting Jordan back out. Like, come hang out, totally cool if you just come chill on the property. And that is until Jordan's real dad finds out that he's been hanging out with this older man on his Neverland Ranch. So this is when Jordan's dad, Evan Chandler, who's a dentist by trade, but he's also an aspiring screenwriter, he approaches Michael and basically tells him that you can either pay me $20 million or get me $20 million in movie deals or screenwriting deals, or I will come forth with these allegations that you are doing inappropriate things with my son. Michael, of course, says, no, I'm not doing that. Like, that's crazy. And I don't do anything awful with your son. So he offers him like a $1 million settlement so that he doesn't say anything because he doesn't want his image tarnished. But he's not happy with that. So Evan says, no, I want more. So he asks him for like $60 million at that point, or he says he's going to come forward with these allegations. Now, first of all, if my kid got molested, I wouldn't be trying to just get money out of the deal. I would be getting the police involved right away. But that's not what happens. Evan, during a dental cleaning with his son, decides to give him some sort of substance called sodium amytal, which sometimes is called truth serum, but basically it just lowers your inhibitions and makes you more likely to go along with something somebody else is telling you. And his dad basically asks him like, yo, did any of this stuff happen? And he says yes. So this gives him full force to go ahead and unleash this civil lawsuit against Michael Jackson, trying to sue him for $20 million.
I am doing well and I am strong. As you may already know, after my tour ended, I remain out of the country undergoing treatment for a dependency on pain medication. This medication was initially prescribed to see the excruciating pain that I was suffering after recent reconstructive surgery on my scalp. There have been many disgusting statements made recently concerning allegations of improper conduct on my part. These statements about me are totally false. As I have maintained from the very beginning, I am hoping for a speedy end to this horrifying experience to which I have been subjected. I shall not in this statement respond to all of the false allegations being made against me, since my lawyers have advised me that this is not the proper forum in which to do that. I will say that I am particularly upset by the handling of this mass matter by the incredible, terrible mass media. At every opportunity, the media has dissected and manipulated these allegations to reach their own conclusions. I ask all of you to wait and hear the truth before you label or condemn me. Don't treat me like a criminal, because I am innocent. I have been forced to submit to a dehumanizing and humiliating examination by the Santa Barbara County Sheriff Department and the Los Angeles Police Department earlier this week. They served a search warrant on me which allowed them to view and photograph my body, including my penis, my buttocks, my lower torso, thighs, and any other area that they wanted. They were supposedly looking for any discoloration, spotting, blotches, or other evidence of a skin color disorder called vitiligo, which I have previously spoken about. The warrant also directed me to cooperate in any examination of my body by their physician to determine the condition of my skin, including whether I have vitiligo or any other skin disorder. The warrant further stated that I had no right to refuse the examination or photographs, and if I failed to cooperate with them, they would introduce that refusal at any trial as an indication of my guilt. It was the most humiliating ordeal of my life, one that no person should ever have to suffer. And even after experiencing the indignity of this search, the parties involved were still not satisfied and wanted to take even more pictures. It was a nightmare, a horrifying nightmare. But if this is what I have to endure to prove my innocence, my complete innocence, so be it. Throughout my life, I have only tried to help thousands upon thousands of children to live happy lives. It brings tears to my eyes when I see any child who suffers. I am not guilty of these allegations, but if I am guilty of anything, it is of giving all that I have to give to help children all over the world. It is of loving children of all ages and races. It is of gaining sheer joy from seeing children with their innocent and smiling faces. It is of enjoying through them the childhood that I missed myself. If I am guilty of anything, it is of believing what God said about children. Suffer little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. In no way do I think that I am God, but I do try to be God-like in my heart. I am totally innocent of any wrongdoing, and I know these terrible allegations will all be proven false. Again, to my friends and fans, thank you very much for all of your support. Together, we will see this through to the very end. I love you very much, and may God bless you all. I love you. Goodbye.
Now, an interesting piece of this puzzle is that Michael did not want to settle on this case. He wanted to fight it out, battle it out, and Michael especially didn't want to settle after David Schwartz handed over these recorded phone conversations between him and Evan Chandler, where he basically lays out the extortion.
This man is going to be humiliated beyond belief. He will not believe it. He will not believe what's going to happen to him. Beyond his worst nightmares. Sell one more record. This attorney I found, I interviewed several, and I picked the nastiest son of a bitch I could find. Once I make that phone call, this guy is just going to destroy everybody in sight. Any devious, nasty, cruel way that he can do it. And I've given him full authority to do that. It'll be a massacre if I don't get what I want. If I go through with this, I win big time. I will get everything I want, and they will be destroyed forever. They will be destroyed. June is going to lose Jordy. She will have no right to ever see him again. Yeah. That's fact, Dave. That's what's going to happen. Michael's career will be over.
Does that help Jordy?
Michael's career will be over.
And does that help Jordy?
That's irrelevant to me.
And does that help Jordy?
That's irrelevant to me.
But his insurance, who was actually going to be paying out any of these claims, they decided it would be better for his image if he just kind of squashed this whole thing. It'd be better for him to just pay the $20 million, settle it, and then nothing would have to come out in court. Everything could be squashed and be sealed in the records, and then he could move on. Because at this point, he's a massive star. He can't take that kind of hit. So his insurance company actually makes the deal to pay this settlement of $23 million to Evan Chandler and the Chandler family. Of course, this hits the media, and of course, they spin it any way they want to. And if you're going to pay a settlement out like that, it certainly makes you look guilty, which is why he did not want to settle on this whole case. But the other major reason that the Chandler family wanted to settle is because little Jordy Chandler wasn't going to testify. He refused to testify in this whole case, which completely throws out pretty much any of the allegations, because he would have to sit there and say, like, yes, this did happen to me. Also fairly interesting to note about this whole situation is that in the aftermath of everything, Jordan Chandler, the young man who was making the accusations, actually emancipated himself from both his mother and stepfather and his dad. So he had no ties with his parents. And this is a legal process you have to go through, where legal authorities have to agree that things are so bad that, yes, indeed, you should be emancipated and be on your own at the age of 16. So things were bad enough for that to happen. And then, interestingly enough, just a few months after Michael Jackson had been reported as passed away, Evan Chandler, Jordan's dad, ends up self-exiting, likely because of the guilt that he felt for extorting Michael Jackson over untrue allegations. The dust finally settles, but it doesn't stay that way for long. In 2003, a documentary is produced by a guy named Martin Bashir. He is a news reporter from the BBC, and he actually gets access into Michael Jackson's private home, private residence, and he calls this series Living with Michael Jackson. Everything seems like it's above the belt. That's until this whole documentary series, investigative series, gets published, and it basically is just one massive smear campaign talking about how Michael Jackson has this crazy, weird obsession and possibly inappropriate relationship with young boys at Neverland Ranch.
And Michael said, fine, I'm going to trust you. And he told me how his trust had been betrayed by other journalists. And I just said, look, you know me, you know my work. If you want to do this, fine. If not, I understand. And he said, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to go upstairs and get ready for the interview. And as I was told later, when he was just about made up and dressed, someone came in with a phone and said, you've got a call from Marlon Brando in London. Brando told him that the deposition, which had been sealed in 1992 from the first case when he was accused of child molestation,
And
settled out of court so that it would all be kept secret. Brando told him that that deposition had been released. It was on the internet, and it would be all over the world by tomorrow, and it would be in the tabloids in the United States the next day.
This was before the charges were brought.
Yes.
Way before.
In fact, the kid who is now charging him and his mother were there that day.
Really?
And we sat in the kitchen having coffee and donuts and sodas, and his mother and the kid said they were willing to go on television to say what a great person Michael Jackson
Hold it right
was.
there. And Brando was wrong, right?
Well, no, because the deposition...
Was it released?
It was released, and it was all over the tabloids the next day.
Oh, was
yeah.
it?
One of the families that was included in this documentary series was the Arvizo family. And they had actually reached out to Michael because Gavin, their son, was diagnosed with cancer, and he was working through chemotherapy treatments, and he really wanted to meet and talk with Michael Jackson, and so they set that up. And not only did Michael call him regularly and send him gifts, but eventually he invited him out to Neverland Ranch.
Every time I talk to him, he's in a better spirit. And you're healing. I'm not just speaking. I know I'm healing. Did I need to, Michael? And then he calls me Dad. I go, you better ask your dad if it's okay for you to call me. They said, Dad, is it okay if I call Michael Dad? He said, yes. He said, no problem. Whatever you want. Kids always do that. And I always feel that I don't want the parents to get jealous because it happens sometimes. And it rubs father in a strange way. And the kids end up just falling in love with my personality. Sometimes it gets me into trouble, but I'm just there to help.
Now, it had been 3 years that Michael had known this family by this point in 2003. They were actually there on the property during some of the filming of this documentary, so obviously some of their interactions were filmed, and it definitely was one of the pieces that would spark some serious controversy later on with how this whole documentary ends up being portrayed. But prior to this documentary, no allegations ever made. No allegations of any misconduct.
Wait. You know how these Bashir... Hey, you know how Bashir zoomed in on him holding hands? Do that the same thing.
Because
Because that's what a mother does with a son, or a father does with a son, And they try to make it out to be something wrong and dirty. Put your back, sir.
The hand holding thing.
Okay.
How did that make you feel?
Oh, we're on camera?
Yeah.
Oh.
We are?
Yeah, I was rolling. Oh, God! To be made an outsider only because of our status in life or what we were going through. And Michael did not have that. He said, come to him, not just Gavin, but Star and Davelin and me, and called us his family. And Gavin was the one that asked him, could I call you Daddy? And Michael said, of course. And so, through him, it sparked Star and Davelin calling him Daddy Michael. Very innocent and beautiful relationship, which everyone has spun it out of control. It's a wish come true. For example, to see my children interact with an ideal role, a father role model. He plays with them, he laughs with them, he lets them win.
He wrestles with them.
He makes jokes with them.
Go on the rides together.
He shows them.
Watch movies together.
He shows them the basic foundation of what life is, and that's a loving family. The stronger your foundation, the higher your building is.
My first impression was that he's a very loving, caring, humble man. He took us under his wing when nobody else would. He didn't turn us away like all the people were doing. And he gave my brother the extra little spark he needed in his mind, because my brother was to the point where he couldn't even move. He couldn't even talk. And he gave my little brother so much.
Then suddenly, after this documentary airs, and they get to see what's being said, suddenly Michael's been SAing these young boys while they're on the property. Not only that, but they say that he is physically assaulting their mom and keeping her there against her will, as well as forcing these young kids to abuse substances while they're there. Now, this time they actually do file criminal charges against Michael. They also file a civil suit. Of course, they got to get some money out the deal. But they do have Gavin go in and testify his experience to the police. And this interrogation, pretty much everybody agrees. He does not seem like he's being truthful. He doesn't seem nervous, even a little bit. He's like tossing things in the trash like it's a basketball hoop. He seems pretty relaxed. And couple that with the fact that the Arvizo kids were all involved in acting classes because they were aspiring actors, it makes you wonder.
He went to the room and emptied out a Coke can. And I think he was Diet Coke, I don't know. But he got a bottle of wine and he put it in there. And then he took it to me and I asked him, well, he said, drink it. And I said, what's that? And he said, it's drinking. So I drank it. I didn't like the taste. And I asked him, what is it? And he said, it's wine, it'll help you. Just keep drinking it. I kept on drinking it. He said that boys have to masturbate because if we don't, like, we could go crazy. He told me a story about this one boy that, like, he went and got a dog and he started having sex with the dog. He said that he wanted to show me how to masturbate. But I said no. And then he said, you do it for me.
Okay. And did he do it for you? Go ahead, Kevin, it's fine.
He put his hand in my pants.
Did he put it on the outside?
Inside.
Inside? And what did he do next?
He started masturbating me.
Okay.
Then I told him I didn't want to do that.
Did he stop?
I told him he kept on doing it. I told him he kept on saying that he wants to teach me, and I told him no.
And what, did he finally stop?
Yeah, after like a long time.
Did you, did any white stuff come out that you remember?
I don't know.
You want something to drink? You're doing a very good job. Let me get you something to drink, okay, buddy? Where are those drinks at?
Now, there is so many things that stink about these allegations, but luckily the jury that was trying Michael Jackson saw right through every single one of them. First of all, the family had been taking advantage of Michael's generosity for sure. He was sending them gifts and he was sending them payments as well for his cancer treatments when his cancer treatments were completely covered by their insurance already. On top of that, they were staying at his Neverland ranch for weeks at a time, not just coming over here and there. They were staying there, essentially living there part-time. He would give them gifts, spoil them with shopping sprees, basically take 100% care of them financially, as well as allow them to live on his property. After that documentary aired, Michael became very nervous about how people were perceiving what he had going on over there, so he asked all the families that were like coming over here and there to not come over anymore, and that would include the Arvizo family. So in March of 2003, they were actually told to leave his property and weren't invited back, which likely upset them. And it was not long after that that these allegations were fabricated. Not only did Gavin and his brother and his mom's testimonies all change throughout the trial, but Janet Arvizo, the mom, also said that Michael held her captive to film a rebuttal video to this documentary. But then she was proven to have been on a shopping spree using money from Michael to be able to go shop around town during the time period that she said she was being held captive by him. Then, one of the prosecution's key pieces of evidence is this dirty magazine that supposedly Michael showed Gavin and forced him to do dirty things with him with it. And they say they've got a fingerprint of Gavin and Michael on this magazine. But the funny thing about it is, this magazine wasn't even published until August of 2003. And like I said before, the Arvizo family was asked to leave the ranch in March of 2003, with all of these legal proceedings in between. And they come to find out that the fingerprints on the magazine came from them being shown the magazine during the grand jury indictment. But let's take it a step further. They also find out that Janet Arvizo has already made a settlement with J.C. Penney's in 1999 for supposedly some sort of security guard physically assaulting her while she was in the store. She had her 2 boys lie on the stand, commit perjury, so that she could win this settlement. But the real tipping point was the fact that she was proven to have committed welfare fraud and was actually under investigation because she had claimed she didn't make any money and had no assets whatsoever and was receiving government assistance, and you've got to report that stuff. So that's fraud. But I guess what the jury remembers the most is how she snapped her fingers at them and was just so theatrical and animated on the stand. They just didn't believe anything she had to say.
I wanted to ask about the mother, and you, Miss Cook, specifically talked about her. You said at one point that she was sort of waving her finger at you.
And she snapped.
Show me what she did.
Just like that, and you don't snap your fingers at a jury, you snap your fingers to get a dog to mind you.
She would look at the jury and then snap her fingers and say, this is the way it should be.
And she was right in our faces.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was very intimidating because Mike and I were directly across from the witnesses. And she would turn right to us like she's just,
But Melissa, what did that say to you? I mean, apart from how it made you feel, what did that say to you about who she was and the testimony she gave?
Her testimony, a lot of the parts of her testimony, I wanted to just break out laughing, but I couldn't. And the parts that I felt that she should have been more, more emotional about, she wasn't.
Did you feel the son was lying?
I thought he was going to answer. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, there were times you could tell, but I mean, it all had to go back to the evidence. So, I mean, it's like right there, the evidence, you have to go beyond a reasonable doubt.
And on top of all of this, there was multiple children who had been to Neverland Ranch, who had stayed there overnight, who had experienced the exact same things as Gavin and his family, and yet they testified in Michael's defense, saying that nothing bad had ever happened to them. Nothing bad ever went on there. It was a safe, fun, loving environment, and Michael would never do something like that. And one of those kids was a young man named Wade Robson.
Meanwhile, a second family claiming to be friends with the entertainer was introduced to CNN late Thursday by an associate of Jackson's. Joy Robson and her 2 children say they frequently stayed at Jackson's ranch, 10-year-old Wade sleeping with him in the same bed.
Yeah, there's been different times where it just be me and Michael. The other times where he has other friends over too. It's just a slumber party. We just have a lot of fun.
And I've slept in the same bed as Michael. It's just a friendship. And I know he would never do anything to hurt my brother.
These kids have been in Michael's room. I've been there with them. They watch videos, they eat junk food, they play video games. There's nothing more to it than that.
Does it seem unusual for a 34-year-old man to have kids sleeping over?
Under normal circumstances, possibly yes. Everybody knows he didn't have a childhood.
And the last time we talked about Wade Robson was in my Twitch episode, because the Wade Robson show is where Twitch really got his start. So considering all of this, the jury came back with a unanimous verdict of not guilty on all counts, which was a huge victory for Michael. He fought through these charges and he came out the other side victorious, at least in the court's eyes. But in the public's eyes, it didn't matter what happened. In fact, the FBI had a 10-year investigation going on Michael Jackson starting in 1993. And that investigation ended in 2003 after these allegations were dropped because they found zero evidence of anything related to Michael doing anything inappropriate with children or breaking the law. But that didn't stop the media from slandering Michael's name and continuing to talk about how he's a crazy child SA offender and basically just pushing this narrative that no matter what happened, it doesn't matter because Michael probably just paid his way out of these charges, or Michael probably just found a way to beat the charges, or maybe he made a deal with the families, blah, blah, blah. Instead of realizing that these families that have been making these accusations were just looking for a money grab. But unfortunately, Michael's reputation would never recover. Michael was acquitted in 2005. He would never return to Neverland Ranch. He was permanently scarred by this. Neverland would actually foreclose in 2008, and Michael really wouldn't do much at all until 2009 when he schedules this comeback residency. Now, here's a little not so fun fact for you guys. Joe Jackson actually had Michael chemically castrated when he was a young man, headed into puberty, because he didn't want his voice to start making those normal male changes that it was about to make. He wanted it to stay that perfect same tone forever. So he was on these chemical concoctions that basically kept him from producing testosterone and kept his voice that way. And by 2002, Michael had 3 children, but all 3 of those kids, Paris, Prince, and Blanket, they were all conceived through in vitro fertilization. And Michael was technically not the biological father of any of them. So this led me to wonder if years of being chemically castrated would have a lasting effect on Michael's testosterone production, or even just generally his libido. And technically it's supposed to come back once you stop taking this cocktail after like 6 months. And Michael didn't keep taking these cocktails after he was through puberty and away from his dad. So he would have normal function of his testosterone, but he just doesn't seem very interested in sex, I guess. I don't know. I'm not really understanding why Michael would be accused of these sex crimes when he doesn't even seem to be very sex motivated. The only cocktails that we know Michael Jackson was on started after that Pepsi commercial incident where his hair got lit on fire with those 2nd and 3rd degree burns. He got started on pain medication at that point, and unfortunately, just like so many artists before him and after him, he got hooked on those meds and couldn't get off of them. And that slowly kept getting worse and worse. And with all of the allegations that just came out and this whole experience going through a trial with his life essentially being on the line, knowing he's an innocent man, that had to be so amazingly stressful, and his drug use skyrocketed at this point. Michael had also developed insomnia and was really looking for ways that he could medicate himself so he could just get a good night's sleep. But despite all of these issues, that didn't stop him from planning a final This Is It comeback tour. Actually, I guess it'd be more like a residency tour where he'd be performing in London from July of 2009 until May of 2010. And I guess he was ready for it. I don't know. He was ready to make a comeback. But as a condition of this whole residency tour, he wanted to make sure that he had a personal doctor on his staff that could be there to take care of him, prescribe him medication, and essentially just monitor him to make sure he's good throughout the entire process of this residency. And so that's when he brings on to his staff Dr. Conrad Murray. Now, Dr. Conrad Murray says that he was introduced to Michael through one of his already patients who was actually a bodyguard for Michael Jackson.
I first met him in 2006 when a patient friend who was a security guard with him asked did I see him as a request because he was not feeling well. He wanted to see a doctor.
Now, Michael had a really long-standing personal bodyguard named Bill Bray for an extremely long time until the guy was like 70 years old. And then he retired and Michael took care of him until he passed away. Unfortunately, we've got a new security team that comes in 2005 after all these allegations kind of get sorted through and Michael's acquitted. And this security guy's name is Bill Whitfield. And Mr. Whitfield was formerly a head of security for Sean P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Brother Love Combs. So this guy could have been the person who was a patient of Conrad Murray, or it could have been another gentleman who actually replaced Mr. Whitfield in 2008, just before Michael decides to do this comeback tour. Now, it wasn't Michael who made this change because he was actually close friends with Bill Whitfield. It was someone within the planning committee, within the record company who was managing this whole tour. They were the ones that decided to let Bill go and bring in this brand new, fresh college graduate who had a business marketing degree, which makes no sense. They hired him on as a driver, and then within 6 months, he was the head of security for Michael Jackson, the biggest pop star that has ever lived. Something's fishy about that. And it also could have been this guy that was a patient for Conrad Murray that got him this position as Michael's physician, his traveling physician. According to Dr. Conrad Murray's logbook, starting in about May of 2009, all the way up until June of 2009, Michael was requesting nightly propofol drips to keep him anesthetized so that he could sleep throughout the night, which doesn't even make any sense. Like, anesthesia, sure, to get you into sleep mode, yeah, I guess. He was having him do a continuous propofol drip so that he would stay knocked out for 8+ hours every night, which required Dr. Murray to be there for 8+ hours every single night, being constantly fixed and watching this drip to make sure that Michael's still alive and everything's good. Supposedly, Michael found out about propofol during one of his surgeries in the 90s, and he realized that it was a really strong anesthetic that could very quickly put him to sleep. And so very randomly, in 2009, when he's experiencing severe insomnia, apparently this is his first thought, is I need to get a doctor who can prescribe me anesthesia medication so that I can basically just be knocked out. I can't even imagine that that was a real thought that he had. But I don't know. According to Dr. Murray, he has the logbook to prove it. But of course, it's Dr. Murray's logbook, so he could have written anything in there. Now, Michael's a very private guy, but we would find out everything on June 25th of 2009. This is when Michael is staying at his rented Los Angeles mansion, and he is not even staying in his own bedroom. He actually is staying and trying to sleep in one of the guest bedrooms, which is supposedly where Dr. Murray would be staying when he stayed over at this house. He has Dr. Murray come over, administer this propofol drip so that he can get some sleep, and at 10:40 in the morning, he says that he administers another dose to Michael to keep him knocked out and sleeping, and then he takes a quick break. He says he was gone for no more than 2 minutes to hit the bathroom, and when he comes back, Michael is not responsive. Now, Dr. Murray is in no condition to help Michael at all. He has no medical equipment. This is a super makeshift little hospital room. You'd imagine that the first thing he'd want to do is dial for some 911 help, right? No. He makes a 46-minute phone call talking to his personal medical clinic. He talks to his girlfriend. He makes a couple of other random phone calls before he actually goes back and then realizes that Michael is still unconscious and dials for help from his bodyguards. He calls Fahim Muhammad to come and help him with this situation. By the time that they get there and the police are notified, it's 12:21 p.m. This all went down at 10:40 a.m. It's been nearly an hour and a half that he's not gotten any sort of medical help. Dr. Murray clearly doesn't know how to perform CPR. He starts worrying about lifting Michael's legs, and he's not even performing the proper chest compressions. And it seems like, based on what was at the scene, that he was just using the little squeeze bag thing instead of actually doing chest compressions and blowing into his mouth, trying to keep him alive. For a doctor, he doesn't even know how to do CPR. What is this? Michael is finally transported to a hospital, but unfortunately, he didn't make it. Now, there's a few weird things with this doctor, Dr. Murray. First of all, the dude had a handgun, a Glock 9mm, in his bag while he's over helping Michael. Not super weird, concealed carry, whatever. But it is strange that all of his detailed doctor's notes about the doses he was giving Michael and the times were all incorrect based on what the toxicology results would come back to show. It would show that he was giving him way more propofol than what he was actually recording. So why lie? And then, when Bill Whitfield and Fahim Muhammad show up, he tells them immediately to start hiding the propofol bottles and helping him clean up the scene. And we inevitably find a bunch of propofol bottles not only in his bag, but also in some random bag in Michael's closet. We also find this random bloody shirt, which I am yet to figure out why, where, how, what piece this plays in this whole thing, but it is interesting. It might mean something. Might mean nothing, but I'm telling you guys, this shirt is weird. Why is it here? Why is it hung up neatly in the closet? Why is there blood on it? And why isn't it in evidence? There is one thing that is still puzzling me, though, and that's these bottles of piss that are on the counters. Supposedly, he had a catheter in, and he couldn't get up to go use the bathroom, so he had to pee in these bottles. But according to Dr. Murray, he was not sleeping. He was up until 7:30 in the morning with insomnia. So where did these bottles of piss come from? What are they doing here? And why? What's with the bottles of piss? Plus, there's all these doggy pee-pee pads that are on the bed. It just makes me feel like he was keeping Michael out cold for a really, really long extended period of time. This was not a 8-hour sleep kind of a thing. We're also told that Dr. Murray was hired by AEG, the company that was hosting this new tour for Michael, because, well, they wanted him to have an on-site physician to help him out. But then in the aftermath, they distance themselves and say that he was an independent hire from Michael himself. So which is it? What I did find really strange, though, was in 2009, the chief creative officer of Sony Records was Clive Davis. Yep, Clive Davis. Should have known, right? In 2010, just after Michael died, Fahim Muhammad would go from being Michael Jackson's head of security at 22 years old, freshly graduated with a marketing degree. He would then go to be Diddy's head of security. And not only that, he would purchase a ton of property along the Mexican wall, along the border, which is kind of suspicious knowing that Diddy is accused of sex trafficking. Think about it.
40 acres of land in San Diego County. That's what one dad gave his son for his 13th birthday.
He posted about it on social media, and their story went viral. Rapper Sean Combs even posted about it. CBS 8's Anna Laurel went to Boulevard, that's about an hour east of our newsroom, to see what they're going to do with all that land.
We're not just out here in the middle of nowhere. Look how close we are to the border wall with Mexico. Now, when we were driving out here, all I saw were a bunch of boulders and a few trees. But when Fahim Muhammad came out here, all he saw was potential.
We see clear space that we uninterruptedly we can enjoy nature, you know what I mean? Especially growing up in a city, a congested city like LA. When we're out here, I mean, it's totally different.
Fahim Muhammad bought 198 acres out here in Boulevard to get away.
It's real quiet.
Yeah, this is not like Chicago, not like LA. He lives in Los Angeles and runs a real estate business that buys and rebuilds properties in the south side of Chicago. He says to create a better living situation for the black community there.
Based on what's happening with this renovation right now.
His company, Oasis Investment Group, even teaches people home ownership.
These are people that have had families on government assistance for years, and now they're actually enrolling in courses to learn how to buy their own homes.
So when his son, Fahim, recently turned 13, he gave him 40 acres.
I thought it would be a great opportunity to teach him a life lesson about the value of land.
And they're teaching other kids from LA these lessons too.
So all them regular rocks you picked?
They bring inner city kids out here to hike, ride ATVs, and build campfires. And even though they're right beside the border wall, they've had no problems. Out here, these city kids enjoy their own private open space.
But it made me think that Diddy is very close with Clive Davis. Clive Davis might have put Fahim Muhammad in that position. He might have had something to do with him getting into Michael's inner circle. And then once he did this job or did what he was supposed to do for Clive, then he gets promoted and moved on up the chain to where now he's head of security for P. Diddy. And we know that he had to have seen some working for P. Diddy, just like all the other bodyguards, which means he was likely complicit because he never said anything to anybody. But why would Clive Davis want Michael Jackson gone, you ask? That's a valid question. Well, in 2003, around the same time that all these child SA allegations start coming to light, John Branca and Tommy Mottola, who is the CEO of Sony Records, those guys are working together and they are siphoning money from Michael Jackson, funneling it through Sony Records, and then through these offshore bank accounts, and then finally to Michael.
You know, being the artist that I am at Sony, I've generated several $1 billion for Sony, several billion. And they really thought that my mind is always on music and dancing, and it usually is, but they never thought that this performer, myself, would outthink them. I'm leaving Sony a free agent, owning half of Sony. I own half of Sony's publishing, and I'm leaving them, and they're very angry at me because of it, but I just did good business, you know. And Tommy Mottola is a devil. I'm not supposed to say what I'm going to say right now, but I have to let you in on a secret.
Say it.
So, please don't videotape what I'm going to say, okay? Turn that off, please. No what? I don't mind. Tape it.
Oh! Michael is getting gangster today! Yeah.
Mariah Carey, after divorcing Tommy, came to me crying. She was crying so badly I had to hold her. And she said to me that this is an evil man. And Michael, this man follows me, she said. He taps her phones. And he's very, very evil, and she doesn't trust him. And he is a horrible human being. And we have to continue our drive until he's terminated.
Oh, there you go.
Michael feels like they are siphoning money off, they are money laundering, he feels like something is up. And John Branca is the guy who facilitated Michael's purchase of the ATV catalogs, the whole music catalog that he owns. It just so happens that when Michael passes away, the will that he had signed in 2002 may not have actually been signed by him at all. His brother has proof that he was in New York City at the time that this will was signed, and the will says that it was signed in 2002 in Los Angeles. But then they just go ahead and say like, oh, never mind, it was actually signed in New York, my bad. But for whatever reason, that doesn't invalidate this will. The main executor for Michael Jackson's estate is John Branca, who knows that he has this massive catalog, which has now gone from a $47.5 million purchase, and it is now a $1 billion asset. Because Michael found out that John Branca was siphoning money from his accounts, he decided to fire him in 2003. And shortly after he got fired, Tommy Mottola then resigns as CEO of Sony Records. Kind of fishy. But if there's one thing that we know about record labels, it's that they do not like artists who think they are bigger than them or think they are more powerful than them, because they will inevitably cut you down at the knees.
Can you feel this? See how heavy that is? It's in alphabetical order. Huh? Turn first page, see the A's, then the B's, then the C's? How many pages is that?
22 pages.
This is a 22-page document of all the acts he owned in alphabetical order. And what do the headlines say? Michael owns 50% of Sony. Huh? That old Beatles stuff, that's chump change. What's that headline say?
List of Sony/ATV music publishing artists.
Read the first sentence.
Sony/AT Music Publishing is a music publishing company co-owned by the estate of Michael Jackson and Sony.
Michael owns 50% of all country western music. He owns 63% of Dolly Parton. Huh? He owns 50% of Charlie Pride. He owns 50% of Bob Dylan. Huh? He owns 50% Moon River. 50% of that song's his. Huh? You see, look, just read him some of the names in it. He owns Babyface. Who is that?
Beyonce Knowles.
Huh? M&M's. Huh? And it goes on and on and on. You see them others there you recognize?
Boys to Men, Bon Jovi, Brenda Lee, Brian Harvey, Brian West, Brick and Lace, Bright Eyes, Brooks and Dunn.
And it goes on and on and on. That's just the bees. And if all this was sold today, the estate would probably get between 40 and 50 billion dollars. Huh?
And with this massive ATV music catalog owning half of Sony, that makes Michael basically half owner of Sony Records, which definitely threatens Clive Davis's power and influence and his ability to get what he wants with the record label. And then guess what magically happens after Michael has passed away? Yep, you guessed it. His family doesn't really know how to manage all these music rights and publishing rights. So the best thing they can do is sell back 50% of these music rights to Sony so that they can manage this music and help make it as profitable as possible. But of course, this is valued at $1.2 billion. Sony then pays $600 million for it. But the access that they're given is like billions and billions of dollars in streaming and purchasing revenue forever. And as if this wasn't enough to poor, unresponsive Michael Jackson, he also gets accused by Wade Robson, as well as another guy named James Safechuck, for allegedly SAing them during their extensive time living at Neverland Ranch, hanging out with Michael, being friends with Michael. But this doesn't happen until 2013, 4 years after he passes away. First of all, he's not even here to defend himself. Second of all, Wade Robson testified in the 2003 trial against Michael Jackson that he did nothing wrong. He was actually on Michael's side. He helped testify in his defense, and he was vehemently against anything negative or anything wrong happening to him.
And remember, he didn't just give testimony in the courtroom. He did some interviews after the trial where he also said, it's ridiculous, nothing happened. He would look at the people interviewing him and ask them if they'd ever slept in a bed with a friend or with a parent. I mean, he could not have been stronger for us. I don't know whether he needs money. I find it very curious that this development happened in the middle of the civil trial that Catherine Jackson and Michael's children have filed against AEG. None of it adds up very well to me. He gave repeated, powerful testimony that Michael was his friend, that Michael had never touched him inadvertently or improperly.
Do you think, number one, he's motivated by money? And it sounds to me like you think that maybe some of the people involved in the case are behind this, the civil case.
I find it very curious. I find it very curious that this claim has arisen in the middle of Catherine Jackson and Michael Jackson's children's civil trial against AEG. AEG's lawyer got up in his opening statement in that courtroom and said things were going to get ugly, suggesting he's going to try and vilify and take Michael Jackson's reputation and try and pound it and hurt it. And you know, they're trying to minimize the value of Michael Jackson's reputation.
First of all, one thing I want to clear up is that this is not a case of repressed memory in any way.
Which has been reported in the press some.
I never forgot one moment of what Michael did to me. But I was psychologically and emotionally completely unable and unwilling to understand that it was abuse.
So what are you alleging that he actually did?
He abused me from 7 years old until 14. He performed sexual acts on me and forced me to perform sexual acts on him.
The prosecution was very pacific about what they asked him, very pacific about exactly what acts he was saying Michael did not do. So for him to then come out in 2013 saying, oh, I just had repressed memories about it, I just didn't realize it was wrong until I got older. Plus, we find out that Wade Robson only made these claims after he had been turned down to be in this Cirque du Soleil Michael Jackson Las Vegas show. And because he got turned down from that, he was needing money, and he probably had a little bit of a vendetta. Like, yo, you're not going to choose me? Like, literally, I was homies with Michael. So, poof, we got some allegations. So, I mean, as hard as they say it is to watch this whole Leaving Neverland documentary, like, I disagree completely. Neither one of these guys seem very emotional or traumatized in any way by what they experienced. And they certainly seem to be painting a picture of what things were like, but why not come out with it much, much sooner? And the whole reason it got dismissed is because of statute of limitations. So now, with the statute of limitations laws being changed, there's a possibility that one of these appeals might actually go through, and then yet again they can sue Michael's estate. And he's not even alive. How messed up is that? All I can say is either Wade Robson's lying now in court, perjury, or he lied in 2003 through 2005 in court, perjury. Either way, this dude's a liar, so we can't trust what he says. And they're also asking for a pretty hefty sum of money for all of this alleged abuse. So I don't know, I don't want to talk about that too much because, well, we don't have the time for it, and it's not worth our time because it's really messed up what Wade and this guy James are trying to do to Michael's estate, especially knowing that Wade Robson owes his entire career to Michael Jackson. He literally met Michael when he was super young. He started dancing because of his infatuation with Michael Jackson. And then after Michael Jackson called him up on stage to dance once, he was electrified. And that set his trajectory to become this world-renowned dancer, choreographer. He choreographed NSYNC, Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys. He's choreographed movies. He had the Wade Robson Project, which is where Twitch got his start. Literally, this guy was a huge success, all thanks to Michael Jackson. And then he has the balls to go back at Michael's estate and try and take even more from him, all based on lies. It's truly sad, in my opinion. And at this point, nothing smells right about this whole situation. and I was fully on board with the fact that we just had ourselves another Clive Davis victim, but that was until I saw this video. Michael Jackson's body moved for sure in that helicopter. Then he gets out of the back of the coroner's van and just waltzes right inside with whoever was in there. What the F? The license plates matched and everything. And after I saw this video, one of the first things that hit me was Lisa Marie Presley. From 1994 to 1996, Michael and Lisa Marie were married. I'd be willing to bet my bottom dollar that they for sure had a conversation about the wacky and wild news that was all over in the 90s that we discussed 2 weeks ago about Elvis faking his own death. I'm sure they talked about it. Not only did they talk about it, maybe Michael got his plans from Lisa Marie on how he would actually do it. And I wasn't the only person to think this about Lisa Marie and Michael Jackson, especially because the year that they got married, this psychic, Andy Rice, says that Michael Jackson is going to follow just like Elvis did and fake his own passing. That became a whole lot more possible when I realized that in 1999, Michael wrote a song called Escape, which wasn't released until 2014 on a posthumous album entitled Escape. But if you read these lyrics, it sounds straight up like he's literally planning to fake his death. Everywhere I turn, no matter where I look, the system's in control. It's all ran by the book. I've got to get away so I can clear my mind. Escape is what I need, away from electric eyes, cameras. No matter where I am, I see my face around. They pin lies on my name and push them from town to town. That's what the media does. Got to get away from the system, lose in the world today. Escape the pressure that I face from relationships, got to go away. Escape the man with the pen that writes the lies that hassle this man. Escape, I do what I wanna, 'cause I gotta face nobody but me. I mean, he's planning to escape. Then, in very similar fashion to Elvis Presley, whose middle name was misspelled on his tombstone, Michael Jackson's middle name was totally different than what he used the rest of his entire life on his death certificate. It said Michael Joseph Jackson, whereas the rest of Michael's paperwork and everything else said Michael Joe Jackson. Maybe it's just a small little thing, but might mean something. Might mean nothing, but it's just like Elvis. Then we've got Dr. Murray, who says that he left after giving Michael that fatal dose, and then when he came back, there was a different person in the bed laying in a different position.
And when I came back, he was in a different position. He was no longer on the pillow. He had moved down, lower on the bed and closer to the edge. But he was there, but it wasn't the same person I saw. It wasn't the same person I saw.
He says it was not the same person. Then, just 2 days after Michael passed away, his brothers Marlon and Randy were driving in front of Michael's house, and they seem to be in fairly good spirits. They don't seem too heartbroken over whatever. And then as they pull off in this vehicle, you can see a figure in the back seat that is just sitting in the back seat. And it looks like it could be Michael. And this is just one of many sightings of Michael Jackson. He's been spotted by fans out and about. He's been spotted by fans in like limos driving by. There's also a YouTube channel that pops up, and the name of the channel is just Michael Jackson spelled backwards. And there's tons of weird videos up on this channel with a guy who looks exactly like Michael Jackson. Exactly. And he has very similar facial features as well as similar dance moves. So, I don't know, kind of weird. One of the weirdest things, though, that I found was that Jermaine Jackson at Michael's funeral service, his memorial service, he sings the song Smile by Charlie Chaplin, and he changes a couple of the lyrics. He doesn't change them very much, but he changes a couple of them that has a huge impact on what the song actually says.
He sang one part of the song differently from the original. Light up your face with gladness, hide every trace of sadness. These are the original lyrics of the song, but Jermaine changed the lyrics to light up your face with sadness, hide every trace of gladness.
Light up your face with sadness, hide every trace of gladness.
What joy was Michael's family hiding on their faces at the memorial? Jermaine's messages to us don't stop there.
Light up your face with sadness, hide every trace of gladness. What? That makes a whole lot more sense as to why his entire family seemed to be in pretty good spirits, including Prince, who's just blowing bubbles of bubblegum and hanging out like nothing's really that wrong. And then they say that it looks like Paris might have some sort of earpiece, like they're telling her what she needs to say. Which sounds crazy, but then when you realize that the entire funeral memorial service is on an artificially lit, like, movie set, what is going on here? This is so weird. Not only was the family unusually happy for what they just went through, but the spokesperson for Michael Jackson and the family, Brian Oxman, also can't seem to stop laughing during this interview where he's talking about how Michael is gone.
Hello, Harry. How are you? It is a very sad day for me here. I am heartbroken.
What was it like to be?
And arrived, and we couldn't even talk. We just hugged. We stood there. We cried, and I am heartbroken. I have warned that one day Michael Jackson would wake up dead, and that I would not be silent.
Then we've got this really weird tweet from Joe Jackson himself, Michael's dad, who says, "Is Michael still alive? It's a mystery. Michael was so creative, anything is possible. I don't expect to see him until I die. You never know." So weird. And then we've got Akon and Teddy Riley, who were both really close with Michael Jackson, who say that he is definitely still alive. They even tweet about it. Also at the memorial service, we've got Kenny Ortega, who's a 20-year friend of Michael Jackson, who is working on the This Is It film, who has a pretty serious slip-up saying that Michael was here. He was here like a week ago, but he wasn't there a week ago because a week ago he would have been passed away already. He'd been passed away for almost 2 weeks at this point. So why did he say that?
We were here. We were right here. A little less than a week ago, and Michael was with us.
The date he said this was July 7th, but Michael passed away on June 25th. There are 12 days in between. Despite nearly 2 weeks having passed, Kenny saying that they were here with Michael less than a week ago suggests that he was preparing for the memorial with Michael. Do you think this is a small slip-up or a big one?
Also, according to Michael's mom, his golden casket is completely empty, buried in that tomb. They apparently had a fake casket and a fake burial so that they could just cremate him and spread his ashes. Makes no sense. And on top of the secret messages in the Escape album, we've got this other posthumous album released called Michael, and the album artwork for this is extremely crazy. Not only is there a Prince symbol, like scattered in here randomly, even though the two of them were technically competitors and didn't really like each other, but then we've also got this secret message in Michael's lips, where it says either alive or I live, however you look at it. But that could mean something. Also could mean nothing, but it's interesting. Then we've got this video of a kid named Omer Bhatti, who is alleged to have been Michael's illegitimate son. He would have been Michael's oldest son if that was the case. But there's this video of him like goofing around and dancing, and somebody off camera giggles and sounds identical to Michael. At first I wasn't convinced and didn't really care, but the more I listened to it, the more I was like, whoa, that actually is him. And then there's this really weird situation with a guy named Dave Rosenthal, who actually changes his name to Dave. And Dave actually is a friend of Michael's. He is a burn victim, and the two of them bonded over the fact that they've experienced burn stuff. And he had invited Dave out to Neverland. He was hanging out a lot. The two of them were good friends. And then there's this random interview after Michael had passed away with Dave on the Larry King Show. And a lot of people say that it doesn't look like the real Dave, and they also say it doesn't sound like the real Dave. It actually looks, acts, and sounds a whole lot more like Michael Jackson, pretending to be someone who had been a good friend of Michael's for a long time, and Michael had done a lot for this Dave guy. So it wouldn't be too far-fetched to think that he would return the favor for Michael if he ever needed it. And what better way to disguise yourself than as a burn victim?
Millions of fans believe he pulled off a wild stunt by appearing on CNN disguised as Dave. Michael often used disguises in public to avoid being recognized.
Not a fan per se, but I always loved his music. And my mother surprised me one day and brought me up to Neverland. And I entered an arcade. We helped, but they're busy off on their day job, and and they leave them at home on the computer, and they just doing all kind of crazy stuff. In the last few weeks, a large amount of ugly, malicious information has been released into the media about me. Apparently, this information was leaked through transcripts in a grand jury proceeding.
And throughout my struggles and my triumphs, and my history, and my comparison to other artists, I can feel, and I know that I am the greatest artist in the world.
Myself, from the confines of my father's criminality.
He caused the fire?
Yeah. He is a criminal, and he...
I wish there was a better way to tell that story, but it's reality.
As you can see, Dave's eyes and expressions bear a strong resemblance to Michael's. The person on the show had dark eyes like Michael's, whereas the real Dave had green eyes. This suggests the presence of two different individuals. You can observe the difference in shoulder width between the real Dave and the person who appeared on the show. This clearly indicates that the person was in disguise. Notably, the person on the show had a nose that closely resembled Michael Jackson's distinctive small nose. The dental structure also shows a striking similarity. Despite the mask and makeup, Michael Jackson's iconic, well-defined eyebrow structure was also clearly visible. Moreover, when Dave speaks, he shows shy and nervous glances at the camera. We could interpret this as Michael, who was used to being in front of cameras, acting cautiously, knowing the risks of appearing disguised as someone officially declared deceased. This nervousness likely reflects the gravity of the situation and the significant risk he was taking.
But this is it, you guys. This is the thing that sold it for me. This commercial right here.
Come alive with Five Alive.
The product is called 5 Alive. Jackson 5 Alive. Michael is alive. This dodo bird pops up from the sand out of nowhere like he was buried there, like he might have been dead. and then he starts moonwalking on the beach, just like Michael Jackson. You also might find it interesting to know that Michael Jackson's friend, Patricia Davis, used to call him Dodo Bird. This was one of his nicknames when he was younger. And then the social media posts on Twitter and on Facebook saying, "I'm alive," and he's clearly dressed just like Michael Jackson. What the heck, dude? And this commercial came out in February of 2010. Not very long after. In fact, less than a year after Michael died. Weird, huh? And this one just kind of like blew my mind, so I had to throw this one in there last for you guys. Because there's a show called Atlanta in 2018. There's this weird character called Teddy Perkins, who seems to have a lot of similarities with Michael Jackson. Number one, they both kind of look similar. And I guess they have very similar stories about their childhood and their relationship with their dad. But the weirdest thing for me was when they showed that there's pictures of this character from the show who also has pictures with his dad, but it's basically a mock picture of a real picture of Michael with his dad. WTF, bro, this is so weird. In the show, this guy Teddy Perkins actually has a story about a brother who supposedly passed away, but actually didn't. He's still alive. And then this Teddy Perkins character, not person, this Teddy Perkins character was at the Emmy Awards in 2018. And the weirdest part about it is the guy who plays Teddy Perkins is Donald Glover. And Donald Glover was also at the Emmy Awards, not in Teddy Perkins' costume. So who was this dude, Teddy Perkins, aka probably Michael Jackson?
Holy shit! Hello. Well, I'm glad you're alive. I was a little worried. I thought it was a documentary. They did technically kill me, but I did not die. I'm still alive.
Now, there are so many more of these, you guys. I didn't have time to go through all of them, but I will link this phenomenal documentary called Michael Jackson is Alive in 2025. I will put it as a card right here so you can just click that and go to it. But I do want to know what you guys think. Do you guys think Michael passed away just the way they said it happened, unfortunately being killed by Dr. Conrad Murray, who was sentenced and did spend, I think, 2.5 years in prison? That's it? 2.5 years? Got released early for what? Maybe he was taken out by the record companies or Clive Davis, just like everybody else. Or maybe he didn't get taken out at all, just like Prince and Elvis. Think about it. But drop it in the comments. Want to know what you guys think. Want to know what you think about the episode, what you think about the Michael situation, who you think I should talk about next. And yeah, I just really appreciate you guys sitting and hanging out with me for this long, listening to me yap about Michael. I was profoundly affected by this story because it's truly sad how powerful the media is and their ability to sway our minds and opinions on a person, especially somebody who has done nothing wrong and somebody who certainly has given their entire life to entertaining the general public and giving themselves fully to their fans. And do you see this picture right here that they specifically chose to put up at Michael's memorial service? Yeah, that came from the Liberian Girl music video. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of homework today, which I know I never do this. You're going to need to go, as soon as you finish this video, and watch the Liberian Girl music video by Michael Jackson, and then enjoy the profound awakening just like I did. I look forward to sitting and doing this again with you guys next week for another one. But until then, sleep safe, stay sober, and later, sobers.
Let's go.